When people see us and they come up to me and they're like, hey, you were my childhood, which is a common thing that I hear a lot. And it's really just coming from a place of like loving something. I always find it strange when people who are on the receiving end react negatively. I'm like, this person actually just told you that they like what you've done for them.
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
All right, here we are back. Another episode of Story and Craft. Thank you for popping back in and checking out the show. Hey, if this is your first time checking out the show, thank you very much for stopping by and swimming in this mischievous podcasting pool that is Story and Craft. Glad to have you here. I tell you what, today, great chat with Dylan Sprouse. If you are a Gen Z kid, you probably grew up watching he and his brother Cole on the show Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, or The Sweet Life on Deck. Both of them have kind of grown into very successful adult actors, both working on some really cool projects. In fact, right now, Dylan has a new film just came out. It is available. It is called The Duel. Not only did he act in it, this is his first time executive producing an independent film, so this is kind of a cool thing for him as well. It was a great chat. In fact, my daughter Lily was kind of sitting just off to the side, just kind of hanging out. She grew up watching them. Now she's 21. And she was here kind of babysitting and minding our mischievous 4-month-old golden retriever named Ranger. He is a bit of a hot mess that we're just definitely in love with. But he does have a habit of anytime he sees me on the microphone, he likes to stir up some mischief. So she was here producing the puppy while I was talking with Dylan, and it is a great chat. Really enjoyed it. Hey, by the way, always ask if you would not mind. I would greatly appreciate you following Story and Craft. Like the show. That way you get notified every time we have a new episode come out. Also, if you would, just leave some stars, reviews. It is always appreciated because it helps folks to discover the show. And anything you could possibly want to know about what we have going on, past guests, anything, just head to storyandcraftpod.com. All right, let's get after it. Today is Dylan Sprouse Day, right here on Story and Craft. So how are you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing swell, my friend. It's been a busy lead up to the movie launch, but good busy,
Very good, very good. So, first of all, where are you at right now? Are you in LA or?
I am. I'm in Los Angeles right now, but in a few days we leave out to Indianapolis. So,
what takes you to Indianapolis? Is that just going to be a little vacation, or is there work happening out there?
A little bit of both. Indianapolis is where we shot the Duel, but it's also where we are doing our world premiere of it. So that'll be this Sunday. So we're doing a little scenario out there, and Indianapolis is lovely. I mean, they have basically given us the keys to the city to do whatever we want for the premiere, which is super fun. So we got a big thing going out there. So we're going to enjoy our time as well as get a little work done.
Well, very good. Very good. Well, I talked to somebody the other day who they shot in where was it? It was, I think it was like Baltimore, and they went back to Baltimore to do the premiere as well. So it's kind of cool when you can actually do the premiere where you shot, I
agree. And people in those areas, I think generally if you find a city that's not as, used to filming, they tend to really show up and rep their own city, which tends to be really fun.
You are also a producer on this, right?
I was, yeah. This was my first time executive producing.
Is this something you're kind of angling to go into more producing, or is this just something you're like, okay, I want to do it at least once?
It definitely. It wasn't a plan. I will say that it wasn't, I talked to a lot of actors and peers who are like, oh, my next step is to direct, which between you and me, I find a little cliche. I don't necessarily have a plan set out to executive produce more, though I will say I know what I do love to do is, help my friends and peers make things that they're really passionate about. And so when this script came across my table, this was kind of when I knew if there was a time to do it, this would be the time. And so, I kind of jumped into it. I definitely intend to do more executive production, but I don't think that I would do it without my team of friends from this particular project, just because it's just such a shorthand with us.
Well, it's kind of fun that you get people together that you enjoy working with. Are these folks that you've kind of traveled through the industry with, or are they just kind of folks you've just kind of picked up along the way?
Actually, they're college buddies and fellow actors I've worked with, so it's been really nice. And then, of course, some of the people I've kind of picked up along the way who were in the movie as well. But yeah, this was really an effort to make a movie for me where I could kind of bring a friend group together and work with the people that I love, and from all the way from front to back, cast, crew, see if that could happen. And I'm really, really proud of the way it turned out. So
cool, very cool. By the way, you'll see my daughter zipping back and forth. I have a rambunctious golden retriever. How old is he now? He's almost 4 months. So he's upstairs, not liking the idea that he's in containment while we're talking here. So she's wrangling him here. But actually, my daughter grew up. I know folks bring it up regularly, but me as a dad, my first introduction to you was the Zack and Cody days. It was a sweet life, and then you're all on a cruise ship. Does that feel like a million years ago for you, or is that kind of still, I like a better way of putting it, fresh in your mind?
No, it doesn't feel too long ago. It is funny though, because when we dissect the time, I mean, I remember shooting the last episode of the show conveniently took place on my brother and I's 18th birthday.
Really?
So now I'm turning 32 in August.
No, you can't. You can't say that. All you're doing is making me feel old. You can't do
that. I know, but that's the reality. But yeah, it's funny. My brother and I both, oftentimes we end up talking to parents more than we talk to the kids who ended up watching the show.
Yeah.
Because the parents had to watch it so often with them that they ended up most of the time they end up breaching the conversation, which I think is very funny.
Any time that, because I have 3 kids, they were 21, now they're 21, 19, and 18. But back then, one would be moving on to whatever is next, the Disney ecosystem, and then the next one would be into the show, and then the next one. And just as a side note, I used to work at ABC Radio Network, and that was where Radio Disney was headquartered out of.
Oh yeah.
At least one, because I didn't think it was all cool. They just remembered having coloring books. And that was the security guard would always bring them coloring books whenever they're hanging out with me when I was doing my show. But they figured out Radio Disney was at the end of the hall, which was an empty studio, because they weren't broadcasting 24/7 from that studio. And then I was cool because there was Hannah Montana posters hanging up on the wall and stuff, and I was like, I was cool because I was down the hall from Radio Disney. But I'm kind of curious, what is that being 32? I'm remembering if somebody was to constantly refer the things that I was up to when I was, a teenager, I'd be like, God, that's a million years ago, man. Is it weird that people bring that up, or, have anecdotes, or even what I'm doing right now, obviously as a parent, is that odd for you, or is it just something you've processed as just a fact of life kind of thing?
No, I will say that the answer though that I'm going to give is wrapped up into a lot of different facets. So I will say, I've seen some people have a hard time with that. Some people that I know personally. And the truth is, I don't really, and I don't really because I think I think my brother and I both avoided a lot of the kind of more critical side of the industry growing up. So I think that when people see us and they come up to me and they're like, hey, you were my childhood, which is a common thing that I hear a lot. And it's really just coming from a place of loving something and having nostalgia and wanting to talk. And I think it's just so positive in general that I always find it strange when people, who are on the receiving end react negatively. I'm like, this person actually just told you that they like what you've done for them. And so I'm like, okay, I don't really find it something like that. My brother and I have also talked quite a bit. He was on Riverdale for 7 years.
Oh, that's right.
And it was funny because while his show was just in the public eye, very popular show, people, we'd, walk together, or I'd see him interact with people, and they would still come up to him for Sweet Life of Zack and Cody instead of being on Riverdale. And I was like, well, maybe this is just a thing that won't change. Maybe this is just going to be a good character you did for a long time for a lot of people, and that just kind of leave it at that, you know? Um, so no, I don't have any. I don't have any like negative feelings associated with it. I find it. I find it really fun as long as people are nice. You know.
Yeah, I can see that would be a very cool thing where you would have a, you are a positive benchmark in someone's life along the timeline.
Hmm.
I just, for myself, I'd be like, do you ever find yourself in a situation where people have a stronger memory of something than you do, and they're asking you or telling you an anecdote or talking about a show or talking about, it's like, wait a minute, you have a hard time even, remembering what they're referring to because it's, for them, it's monumental. For you, it was kind of a day of work. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Most of the times when people are like, "Would you remember this moment and this moment?" I'm like, in truth, I think by the end of the show, we did, gosh, like nearly 200 plus episodes. So each was a full week of work, right? So,
Right.
I tell them, I'm like, kind of not. I remember moments, but I remember those moments from a very different perspective. And the perspective is always coming from a place of the little things that happened on set during that time. But I mean, my memory's getting worse. The more projects I do outside of the show, and we started when we were 11 years old on that, and then ended at 18.
See, that's the thing that blows my mind. I don't know if I could actually, if I could remember back to that time. I don't remember too many things. I'm a little older than you are, of course. I don't remember too many things. Maybe it's good that other people can act like my memory for me and they can help me. I have friends from high school who will like bring something up. I'm like, oh God, I forgot about that. Or they'll bring up a story about something in my own life, with my family or something. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That did happen. But it's funny. I was thinking about the other day, it was Cole who was in 5 Feet Apart. Is that
Yeah.
right? Was he? Okay. Because we were on a cruise with the kids and it was going back a couple of years ago. And let's just say, I had some bad eggs Benedict. That's all I'm going to say.
On a cruise. Holy hell.
So I'm spending a lot of time in the cabin. And so we were watching that, and it's just kind of cool to see the maturity of roles and the things you're doing, and both y'all are very, very talented. Given the arc of career and life with a lot of folks who start off as kids, good on you, my friend. Doing great.
I appreciate that.
Just a little bit of origin story. Is Cole your only sibling, or did y'all grow up with other siblings?
He is, he's my only sibling. I think it would have been nice to have another one. No, he's my only sibling. I think our parents both didn't really expect to have even one child, and then it became two overnight, and so they decided they were going to stop there, which was a good idea. So he's the only one that I grew up with.
Were your folks were they in any way in the industry? Were they creative types, actors, or anything like that, or were y'all kind of the genesis, a whole new experience in the Sprouse family?
Whole new experience. Yeah. So not really. None of them were really in the industry. My parents got divorced when we were very young. And my mother, being particularly enterprising, knew that twins in the industry at that time were, got a lot of work because you could use a baby for double the amount of time that you could, if it was a twin, then you could use, a singular child.
Yeah, because they can only use you for like a couple of hours or something. There was a specific time limit.
4 hours, but you get 8 hours if you have twins, right? So we got a lot of work when we were young, and that was kind of the kickoff. And it really started to go into the stratosphere. We did Grace Under Fire, and then after that we did Big Daddy, and that's when it kind of all shifted. Right, and we started getting a lot more work after that.
Yeah, Big Daddy. That the movie poster is just kind of locked in my mind with Adam Sandler in front of the door,
peeing on the wall. Yeah,
or the wall, or whatever it was. But did y'all grow up in L.A. or did y'all move to L.A. for the business?
We grew up in L.A. My father was working overseas at the time, in both Italy and then eventually Switzerland. And we moved back from Switzerland very young into Burbank, and where this all started. But we hopped around from a bunch of different spots in LA. But the industry at that time was very, very different. Like you kind of had to be in Los Angeles if you wanted castings for anything at all.
Yeah.
Now you can cast from anywhere. A lot of self tapes. But yeah, back then the industry was a very different beast. So we grew up in LA, kind of alongside all of it when it was happening.
What kind of business was your dad in, or is he in?
My dad's an auto body repair, so he's just been in his field since he was right off the aircraft carrier after the Navy, and he's just kept it up ever since. He's really good at it. So he always wanted me to get into a job where I worked with my hands, and I said, "Sorry, Dad, I gotta."
Well, now you're working with your full instrument.
Exactly.
If you think you can tell him like that, it's from head to toe. You're not just working with your hands. That's a good thing.
He prefers the action movies for sure. That I do.
Did y'all ever live in well, I always forget the name of it, but there's an apartment complex that everybody who's a young actor seems to kind of go through. It's changed names the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. No, we didn't live there. We predominantly lived in the valley over there.
Okay, so you had a house. You were living there. That's right. Yeah, I always thought it'd be cool as a kid to be able to be living in a place with a bunch of kid actors, running around.
We did for a little while. We lived in the Summit. And the Summit was like the Woodland Hills version of that. It was, but the only other actress who lived there was Kristen Stewart. And so like we were, we joked about it when, I saw her not too long ago, but last time I saw her, I was like, "Were you a Summit kid?" She was like, "Yeah." But yeah, it really wasn't as much of gosh, I wish I could remember the name of that complex that you're talking about, but, yeah, not as much like that. I'm sure it would have been cool, but also not cool at the same time.
The Oakwood.
Oakwood.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And talking about kind of the progression, as you were coming up, were you looking at it like, okay, acting is going to be the thing long term I'm going to do, or did you feel I was compartmentalized as, okay, this is my kid thing, then I've got to go to college and, pick up a different career? What were you thinking as you're coming up?
Honestly, neither of those. I went to college because I wanted to make sure that I explored some other options for myself, diving into some hobbies and things. Again, my brother and I were put into this industry at such a young age that it didn't really allow me to explore work as another option. Though I did particularly, even amongst my brother and I did always like to pick up jobs in between and try things out. I worked at a number of different places, even while I was doing the show, just for my own sake, because I liked doing it. But going to college was really in an effort to decide on my own agency whether I liked the art of acting or not. Because, when you're doing it for so long and you're put into it by your family, there is a coming of age moment where you say, is this actually what I would have done or would have wanted to do if I had my own choice? And the truth is that I went to college, I just did my bachelor's, but I went to NYU, and while I was there, I studied video game design and creative writing and studio art and really just storytelling in general. And then, I came out of it and I realized all of the things that I really do love to do in my life have some element of telling stories and being expressive and these things about it. And whether, that's nurture or nature, I think I'll never truly know. But what it did make me realize is that I do love acting and being in the industry, and I just want to have it on my own terms. And so that was, a 4-year long lesson, and I'm really, really glad I did it.
When you're at NYU, which is, it's known to have a great film program, did you take advantage of that while you were there, as well as studying the other stuff you're doing, or did you kind of leave did you try to do anything but acting?
Not at all. Not at all. The only thing that I took advantage of was the movie screenings. That was about it. I just kind of popped every once in a while in to check out the movies that were being screened. Yeah, so I didn't do any of that. That's just because it's not because I don't think that I would have benefited from it. I I did see, like, my buddies were in the program and I saw their curriculum and it seemed fantastic, and the staff seemed fantastic. It was just in the quest to understand what I really wanted to do. It would have been a detriment to me. Furthermore, like, I don't know, maybe this is a bit controversial, but I'm of the mindset that, like, first and foremost, to be a good actor, I feel like you have to be a good empathizer. And to have empathy requires of you to know a lot about, I think, certain other subject matters. While all the curriculum that I saw at NYU was very stifling, it also didn't really allow, because they're much more of a method school, right, where they're putting you into your certain methods, didn't allow you to really branch out that much. And so I knew that kind of wasn't for me.
So where were you out picking up those life experiences? Where were you trying to seek out those things that you weren't able to pick up at school? Were you bouncing around New York just checking stuff out, or were you just,
Kinda, I guess. It's hard to put, like, I think it's all the little things, right? I think you can compile a ton of little things into what it looks like at the end of the day. I think I was forced into having to empathize from a very young age, even due to having a twin brother. But I will say that I did my best to explore the city virtually on a nearly constant basis between classes. I took a wide range curriculum. I went out with people. I tried different things. I tried new jobs after that. I tested it all out. And this is in no way claiming that what I did was any sort of training that is to the degree I would have hoped.
well, you're kind of seeking your own journey in a way, though. You're kind of seeking out your own, thing that your own recipe of what you want to life experiences, I guess, lack of a better way of putting it. Is that kind of accurate?
100%. I also think that's I think right now, honestly, I think that's the only thing that really makes actors interesting right now. I have to be frank. I think that there's a major actor bloat. And it's largely because of social media and the way, like, casting methods have kind of come about nowadays. It's a very different, but we're very oversaturated with actors, and not in a bad way. I think,
Well, it's just because the accessibility, I guess, of the technology and being able to self tape and all that. Do you think that kind of facilitates that glut, if you will, a little bit, for lack of a better way of putting it?
absolutely. I mean, I certainly do. I also think just the mentality behind casting has changed a lot too, right? Like, whereas before, I think when I was growing up, there wasn't a huge booklet of actors and actresses that casting agents could actually look through. There was, to a degree, but they got that book from the agencies, and those agencies were actually investing time and money sometimes into these talents to make them a thing and try to push them. Nowadays, I think casting agents can look through the entire World Wide Web and find a single person who is exactly the person that they're looking for, but they're maybe not an actor yet, or they maybe won't work again after that.
Or they can check their social media following, and that's part of the
100%.
game. It's so funny because I coach voiceover, and I work with some folks that are some successful actors, all the way to people
Mhm.
just starting. And I speaking with one of the talent managers, now they're looking at it like you need a book of work before they'll even sign you.
You know what it sounds like to me? When I hear that nowadays, I mean, this is, by the way, this isn't just our industry. I think it's our industry in general, all the industries. Development's just dead. I don't think the agencies want to develop anybody right now, because they see the kind of thing that can happen if the actors or the talent or whatever it is take it on their own accord to kind of push their own content, and they just said, well, why don't we just let them do that and try to help them out from there.
the idea that back in the day that you can kind of create your own thing would be pretty badass. You can create your own opportunities. So if you have one really talented actor who's really just rock star, but they have a small following compared to someone who's kind of getting rolling, they got some chops, but they have a monster following, that does affect casting a little bit, where that wouldn't have been a thing back in the day. So I know I'm sounding like an old guy right now, like, oh, back in my day, you know?
Absolutely. No, I mean, I'm right there with you. I feel like an old guy too. But you know what I will say I do find funny, though, is if, like, honestly, and if you were to look it up, if you were to look up, like, who you consider to be the best, either young or, like, middle-aged or older actors right now on all their social medias, maybe 1/10 of them actually posts and does stuff. Like, most of them are like the way it used to be. I don't think people actually care as much as the industry thinks they do. But yeah, you look up any of, like, the hottest young actors and stars right now and actresses, and you'll find that their Instagrams, their Twitters, their TikTok, they're virtually non-existent.
You know, I will agree with you, because when we have a guest on, like, I always like to make sure folks, when they go to my site, they know where you're, you know, if they want to check out your socials. And I've noticed that you have folks that, unless they have some reason for it, let's say somebody who's really into photography and they like to use their Instagram to kind of showcase that. It's not, you're correct. There's some people just are, you know, aren't even on it. Just kind of as a side note, we'll say down the line, you've got kids. Is this going to be something you encourage, or those they say, hey, Dad, I want to do this acting thing. What's your drop of advice to them going to be? Are you going to encourage that, or are you going to give them cautionary tales instead?
I mean, I think I think children seem to be naturally inclined to want to try the things their parents do. I would urge caution, but I would also urge them to explore how it actually is, right? I had such a unique upbringing in this industry. I don't think that can be honestly replicated again. It might never be replicated again, just due to the way the industry is changing. But I think I would encourage my children to do and follow any interest that they have in the effort of trying to find something that they love to do. I definitely wouldn't stifle them. I don't think that I would be without my, like, protectiveness about it, because but that's, I think, to their benefit, hopefully, because I think I know what this industry looks like behind the scenes in that way now. And I would certainly encourage them. I would encourage them. I wouldn't, try to walk them through it. I wouldn't try to hold their hand. I think they need some independence in this field, but yeah, no, I certainly would.
So are you, is LA you kind of think it's going to be your home base, or are you kind of thinking, well, I've spent a lot of time here. It seems like you said, you can audition and do stuff from anywhere. Do you have any kind of like destination? Like, I've always wanted to live in this place. Is there anywhere out there like that?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I have, we have some acreage up north, and I would love to, ideal world, I'd love to kind of get a big plot of land, terraform it, turn it into kind of a big playground, have a really nice place up there outside of the city a little bit. But I'm also, like, I'm not fully an escapist. I talk to a lot of people who are like, man, I can't wait to live on a farm. And I grew up around farms, so I'm like, I don't think you know what that actually means. Like, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
It's not this kind of like Animal Crossing ecosystem. It's definitely tough. So I think here's my ideal world. I'd like to live in a nice place where I could get a good plot of land that is 35 to 45 minutes outside of a major city.
Well, growing up in Dallas, a lot of people did that. You'd go up north and you'd be in almost ranch land, so you can kind of get away, but it's right there. So if you need it, and you got that around California, and around LA, rather, just north.
Yeah. I mean, just north, you can get some good stuff. I think I'd want to go to someplace a little more temperate of climate, though.
Whenever you're not working on projects, what are you up to? What are you doing that's kind of keeping you active or engaged?
I'm a big hobby geek. So I'm like oftentimes just hobbying. Actually, like this case that you see behind me is just filled with Warhammer figurines. Um, I like doing. I like diving into my hobbies. I'm married now, so obviously, any time that I get to spend with my wife, where we have time together while she's not working and I'm not working, we like to get outside and hang out and make sure we have spend time together. And I got two animals. I'm pretty low key. But I will say that the child actor in me, who is always working, is also trying to kind of constantly I have about a month buffer period before I start to get anxious. That's something that I've been trying to work out. That's when I start kind of grinding for the next thing. At the end of the day, most of this is still a commission job. So, but I love brewing. I have businesses. This kind of, I get down dirty with my hobbies.
You like brewing, you say?
Yeah. I've been a brewer for most of my life now, since I was 16.
Really?
And I opened a business in Greenpoint that we're moving out to Los Angeles now, which has been a nightmare. But yeah, this has been something that I love. Again, just like I like getting my hands dirty with things that I really love doing. So
No, that's very cool. That's something I've been wanting to get back into, but it's just, as you know, it takes up a little bit of space and time, and it's just sort of. But now that my kids are all going to be off at college, all three of them, now I got all kinds of time.
do you brew? Do you brew a little
I
bit?
did once upon a time, but I did to concentrate. I didn't really do the whole thing with getting all the individual ingredients. I kind of cheated a little bit, but
Were you making wine?
no, that actually is something I found out in my family. I had a great uncle who did that,
Cool.
and I just remembered that the other day. It's funny you mentioned that because I thought that'd be kind of cool to do that as well. But
Yeah, you
I enjoy
should.
the process. I love cooking, and to me, a good home brew it tastes different. Even the
I agree.
carbonation of the brew. Well, I guess got to ask now because I always end up talking food, but this is the first time I've talked beer. What is your favorite? Kind of like your Mount Rushmore, maybe top 3 beer styles that you enjoy.
I think at the very top for me is Pilsner. I am a lighter beer guy. I do find that when I want to drink a beer, I want it to be a beverage that feels refreshing. So I was never really on the IPA train. I was never really on like the Doppelbock or the how many hops can we stuff into one container.
It seems like everybody that that does brewing, that's always their thing. They always try to go for like an assault on your taste buds. For me, I'm a big Mexican, just good crisp lager or
Mexican lagers rock. I'm right there with you. I will say though, it's funny because working at the meadery, I make mead predominantly. That's what was my mainstay. But I did partner with a lot of brewers, and the funny thing is that we had a ton of brewers come into the meadery, and that was like our main business for a while because a lot of the brewers who love the act of brewing got sick of making beer and wanted to try and like actually relax and drink something different. So they'd come in and they'd drink mead.
That uses is it honey? Is that what the mead uses? Okay.
Yeah,
so it's ferment. Uses the honey to ferment to convert to. Okay, I gotcha.
Exactly. That's our primary fermentable sugar. But all of them is so funny. Like they'd be making these peanut butter and jelly stouts and these quadruple IPAs and these just foul beers that people would come in and drink in mass. And then they would go home and they would be like, or they'd call me up and be like, yo, do you want to get like a 6-pack of Bud Light and go drink outside somewhere? I'm like, dude, I get it. It's like you after a while, you get kind of sick of it. That's why I'm on the Pilsner train. I do love a good Guinness. But I will say all the choices that I'm going to say are like a lighter beer.
When I lived in California, I was a big fan of Carl Strauss. They had something called I think it was Longboard Woody Ale. That's what it was, Woody Ale.
Yeah.
They don't even make it anymore, I don't think. But no, living here down on an island, I'm like the way I look at it is like refreshing. If I drink a beer, I don't want to feel like I've just Plus, I'm getting a little bit older and putting on a little more weight than maybe I should. I told my daughter the other day, I was like, I can't. I love to have a beer with whatever like a burger or whatever, but that's a lot of empty calories. So I'm like, okay, a light lager. I don't know. Like I kind of feel like
Yeah.
like Corona's my utility beer. It's this just a go-to. I think everybody's got,
Good.
like you said, Coors Light. People have their utility thing. Now, food-wise, like what do you find to be your favorite match with you when you get a beer you really like? What's your favorite match food-wise to put with it?
Gosh, when I drink beer, I am actually a big pub fare guy. I do love pub food. It's definitely been the bane of me. I have to get into and then I get out of shape all the time. It's just
Yeah, I know that.
it's been the curse of my life. But I'm always like, someone's always saying, "Hey, you're doing this movie where you are super lean and fit." But by the time, I do it and I get there and it's great. And then when we get to the PR, I'm already completely out of shape again. Just because I do enjoy food so much. My dad's a huge foodie. My brother's a huge foodie. So, but I do love pub fare with a beer. I'm particularly fond of burgers and dogs. I can do it. I'm an American at the end of the day. I love a burger and dog, but honestly, my wife's a phenomenal cook, and she is Hungarian, so she makes a lot of Hungarian food.
Very good. Yeah, that's
hmm
yeah. I've some of my good friends are from a good friend of mine does all my design works in Budapest. So,
Oh yeah, a lot
but
of good designers in Budapest.
they have a good different creative vibe. That's why I like working with them. But you mentioning the food thing, since you're executive producer, did you have any kind of hand in the craft services on the Duel? Did you like, okay, I kind of want some of this food sitting around while we're while we're working?
No, I didn't actually, which I gotta say I'm happy about, because there was a little bit of an issue that broke out on set one day because of it. Now, mind you, we also shot this movie in the middle of COVID, so our restrictions for food and our restrictions for just everything was a lot more strict. But yeah, we were down in Indianapolis, and we had our DP who was phenomenal, but he was particularly strict about his diet, and he had just been served for like the umpteenth time, I guess what you would call comfort food, and he was sick of it. There was a bit of an issue. The craft, he quit, which was kind of funny, but
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah,
The first film I did, they had no, it was a show I was shooting. I'm sorry, it was a show, and they were shooting in New Orleans, and where we were living at the time, and they thought, okay, everybody here is going to want jambalaya, some big heavy pasta creamy thing because it's New Orleans. I'm like, and I
yeah,
made the mistake of having a little too much of that, and then I'm going to have basically nap during a scene,
right,
So,
trying to sleep.
but yeah, you kind of mentioned the pub fair. It's kind of one little side note. There's a little dive place near us. It looks like looks like a straight up dive, but they are known for the food. Like they make Scotch eggs, the whole fish and chips,
Oh,
the whole.
it's my
And I
favorite.
took my daughter. My daughter bartends at a beach bar. She's on her gap year, and she got
Cool.
off work, and it's the only place that was serving late. And I said, "Let's pop in there." Every day, my daughter's going to sit over here and laugh at me. I'm like, "Yeah, I got to eat a little healthier, maybe not as heavy." And then inevitably, I end up just devil on my shoulders, like cholesterol. You want it.
Do the Scotch egg. Eat the Scotch egg, Mark.
And those a good one with a beer. Let me tell you, that just is. And it got to
Oh
have it like
yeah.
a crisp lager. Kind of cuts the fat.
I'm the same way. I'm weak for that fare. But I also, I will say my favorite food, now that you mentioned, my favorite food ever is shrimp and grits. So
Really? Okay.
I'm a big seafood guy, and particularly crustaceans. I love to dive into hard. Shrimp I could eat any day, anytime. But I also really love Japanese food. So that's great with a beer as well. So
It is. It is. I always get a nice tall Sapporo or Kirin whenever we're somewhere.
whew,
Um,
Chris.
Going back to the Duel. Now, how did this come together for you? Were you involved in writing the script, or you said you had a team of people, or not a team, but a group of friends? How did this gel together?
I'll tell you. So I worked on this movie called Banana Split when I was, gosh, I want to say right out of college. I worked on this movie called Banana Split. Fun little movie. And who played my best friend in the movie was this actor named Luke Roberts, and we remained fast friends after that because we had this love of history and we had this love of geekiness and all the above. So we became fast friends. And some years went by, and he had messaged me, started writing a little bit, and I was like, oh, cool, I'd love to read what you have one day. And so, another year went by, and he texted me and said, hey, Dylan, you're one of the first people that I've sent this to, and I'm sending it to you because it has this kind of historic and history element. I'd love for you to read this. And I said, I'll read it ASAP. And he goes, it's about these two friends who wrong each other and decide to duel each other to the death. And I was like, that's amazing. So we jumped right into it. I read it very quickly. When you read a great script, it does all the legwork for you. It kind of just jumps off the page. So I read through it, loved it, called him immediately back and said, hey, I need to meet up with you ASAP about this. And he was like, okay. And him and his writing partner at the time, Justin Matthews, who is also a co-director on the Duel, we met at Dan Tana's in Hollywood, and we sat down for some chicken parmesan.
Oh, that's talking food again. That's one place I've not gone. I've always wanted to go there for that specifically. Yeah,
you got to check it out.
You can tell I haven't had lunch yet.
I'm really hungry too. So we sat down, and I told them, guys, I don't know where you're at with this movie. It's phenomenal. It's really well written. I think it is touching on a zeitgeist of feeling amongst young men right now. And I want to help you get this made. And that was the kind of catalyst which started us getting the Duel going. And that was, years ago now. But through that process, I was learning so much. And I said, I want to executive produce on it eventually. And I said to Luke and Justin, who at the time didn't really think that they wanted to direct it. I think they wanted to pass it off. I was like, I really think that you guys should direct this. And they were kind of like, I don't know how we're going to do that. And I was like, you'll figure it out. That's always the way these things go. And they did phenomenal on it. And I'm immensely proud of this movie. I think it's probably my proudest movie I've ever made as an adult and independent. I think this really has a lot to say, and the reception to it so far has been awesome. So I'm very, very happy.
Talking about the zeitgeist of what kind of young men are experiencing, I was kind of curious where your thoughts about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there's I think that some of the things I'm going to say are not just particularly young men, but I do want to say that in general, I think it does lean more young men. I think that there's a major disenfranchisement from television and film right now for young men. I think that there doesn't feel like a lot is being made for them, even though it's being preached as being made for them. And so I think that, and it's no surprise, I'm this way too. We've seen a major rise in video games, right? We've seen video games boom, be immensely popular, which I personally love. So we've seen that. We've seen and I think I can see it slipping through the cracks because I am a little bit of a doom scroller on Instagram and other things like that. I love to see, and I'm looking at these, accounts that are popular and these kind of streamers, and I'm seeing their senses of humor, and I'm watching the way they're speaking and the things that are immensely popular in my friend group and outside of that, but just boys, and the rise of anime becoming incredibly popular. And I see all of this and I go, well, underlying this all, I think what is not being provided is films and television for this same group. Because if it was...
Or is it really stories that connect? Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
100%. I think it's if there was, then I think there would be more of a dialogue about this happening. And I think, call it for what it is, but I think the streamers have been both great and both terrible for the industry as a whole. But one of the things that I really don't think is good, and it's a far cry from, I think, what the platforms used to look like in their heyday when they were really making these brilliant projects and supporting artists in ways that there's a kind of one size fits all mindset for a lot of shows nowadays, and I think that we've gotten into this does the shoe fit mentality of television and even film, where you watch it and you go, okay, well, this isn't for me. It's not for me. It's actually not for everyone because it's for everyone.
Well, do you think that has something to do with all the streamers that are out there? Just more portals to get content, in air quotes here.
Totally.
There are blocks being missed of people who want to digest certain kinds of stories, let's say.
You know, the funny thing is, I disagree. I don't think it's blocks being missed. I think every block is being hit a little bit, but it's the jack of all trades, master of none thing. Right?
Yeah. You don't really have those bigger, like the Judd Apatow comedies that were coming out early 2000s. It's just the way the budgeting in Hollywood works. Do you think that has a factor? What kind of budgets they want to allocate to certain types of projects?
Absolutely. Well, to harken back to our earlier conversation about development, even, I don't think that studios really develop much anymore. They're not trying to actually take risks at all. And especially on, an indie scale, right? They're looking at indie projects, maybe that they're really good, but generally, and I'm not saying all, there's always exceptions to studios. There's always exceptions to agencies. There's always exceptions to this, of course. But in general, if you look at what's happening, they'll look at indie projects the way that agencies look at hiring like TikTokers, for example. Did I lose you? Am I here? That look at putting TikTokers on their slate. They go, hey, this person does all of their own work, so we don't have to spend any money on development, and they might be able to source the work for us. Now, that's a pretty pessimistic way of looking at it, honestly, but that's the way indie projects are approached in general. So the things that you see have billboards, the things that you see get pushed are projects where the studios have analytics that they might do well enough for them. And of course there's risks, but no one at studios really wants to lose their jobs anymore. Everyone's afraid of making a mistake. It's you think about a movie like The Thing or Big Trouble in Little China, and I'm like, how did that movie get, the script must have looked crazy, but also the budget that went into it was so risky. And then again, I think that the audiences and people's willingness to go to theaters was different then. But I don't know. I hope there's some middle ground between risk taking and people who are creative and making interesting movies again.
As we kind of wrap up here, I like to throw out my 7 questions, a little fun extra bit. The first question I always ask is, we've already discussed the food thing, but what is your favorite comfort food?
Well, I guess that'd be, you know what I'll say? Because I already said shrimp and grits. I'll say I am a BLT fanatic. I think it is the perfect sandwich, and it can't have any other inclusion. It can only have one risky ingredient on there, but no avocado, no egg, it's got to be a perfect BLT. It's a perfect sandwich. Leave it at that.
You're a purist, kind of like me. I want the thing, not an interpretation of the thing.
There's a reason it's called a 3-letter thing. It needs just that, and mayonnaise.
Exactly. Now, next question. If you're going to sit down with 3 people, living or not, you're going to sit down and talk story for a few hours over some coffee. Who would those 3 people be that you would like to sit down with?
I would like to talk to Harold Hardrada, who was a you could call him a Viking prince that almost established the Varangian Guard, and then sailed back up the river systems to Scandinavia and had a massive reign. He's just a really interesting character. That's a guy I'd love to have. I'd love to, now that I am older, I wish that I could have had more time to speak as an adult with my grandmother and my grandmother on my mother's side. So those would be the other 2.
I'm there with you, and because as you get older, there are certain things that pop up, like I kind of want to discuss this thing, or I didn't, this is a thing now. Don't you wish you had all those questions already queued up when you were young,
I
and you
know.
knew what to ask? Yeah.
So that would be mine, I think.
And who would that third person be? One other person to have coffee with.
Oh, one other person to have coffee with. Sheesh, I haven't. David Lynch. I love him. I just love him as a human. So I'd love to. I met him only once, and it was amazing. But
That sounds like a very intriguing coffee date. Now, the next question I got for you is, going back to young Dylan, who was your first celebrity crush?
My first celebrity crush. Whoa.
I mean, you're in a position that maybe you worked with them. Who knows? But that one person, you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to meet this person.
Gosh, let me see. I'm gonna blank if I don't say it correctly because I'm blanking now. When I was young, I think like when I was first saw it, I saw Troy, and I was enamored by Diane Kruger. I thought that she was like just gorgeous. She is still gorgeous. That was my first celebrity crush. But you want to know what's so funny is that when I was a teenager, my celebrity crush was, and it sounds like it's not true, but it legitimately is. You can ask any of my friends growing up with me. My legitimate crush was Barbara Palvin, and who is now my wife. And I was completely enamored by her. And I saw the interviews and stuff, and I thought she was so beautiful and funny. And then the way that the world goes. Years later, we met, and then it worked out. Maybe that's some form of manifestation.
That's a little bit of a I don't want to say fairy tale, but it's kind of cool that you got that. It's I'm sure you've mentioned that to her.
I have. I don't try to hype up her ego too much, though.
I'm sure she's thinking the same thing about you too. Now, if you're going to be forced to the next question, you're going to be living on an exotic island a year. It's wonderful. It's a place you really want to be, but it does not have internet, so you can't stream anything. You got to bring one album with you and one DVD of a movie. So what as far as musically and what kind of theatrically, what are the two things you want to bring with you?
Okay, so I'm safe. I have like water and food.
Yeah. Oh no. It's like a resort. You just don't have internet. There's no way to stream anything. Yeah.
I can't bring a video game.
Yeah. You know what? I will adjust this question to say, what video game would you bring as well?
Okay. If I was on an island album, I'd probably say like, God, it'd have to be upbeat. This is the kind of question that always kills me because I'll think about it.
You think of like a box set, if you want to do a box set or something.
Box
like
set.
That,
I'd
or
probably
best
pick
of.
Terry Reid box set, something of Terry Reid, and then I would do for video game. I would do Total War Warhammer 3 with all the workings because it's just like you can just grind that one more click thing.
Okay.
But if it was DVD, I would do The Big Lebowski.
Righteous. I like that. My favorite, you're a beer guy. There's a place that was called the Flying Saucer in Dallas. And every Wednesday they do a thing. I think it was Wednesday. You go in there and you'd get their beer of the week. They give it to you in a commemorative glass. It's a white glass, but it's got Jeff Bridges' face on it, and it says "The Dude Abides."
Hell yeah!
And that's my favorite glass I've got. So that was I don't remember the beer, but I remember the glass.
If you ever go to Iceland, there's in downtown Reykjavik. There's a place called the Lebowski Bar, and it's all themed like Big Lebowski.
Very okay. Very now you've got a destination for me. That the Lebowski Bar, that's worth going to Reykjavik alone, right there. If you were to define beginning from the time you wake up to the time you put your head down on the bed at night, what are the component parts of a perfect day for you?
I think the component parts of a perfect day for me is time spent in my yard. Time cooking, eating a good meal in general is definitely a component of that day. I'd like to get a little bit of a workout going or a sweat going. And I feel like playing some video games, watching some entertainment that I like with my wife, and going to bed at a good hour. That is all front to back. That is what I would. That is what I would say.
That's purely aspirational for me, the whole like good hour thing. Now, if you were doing this, what would you be doing for a living? I mean, what would that thing be that would bring you joy? If this was not an option for you, what would you be up to?
Honestly, I'm pretty blessed in that I've been able to follow those hobbies of mine that I feel like I know that I would be doing, and that's probably brewing. I would probably be brewing. It's something that I really love. If I wasn't doing this, I'd probably try to do some video game design work, honestly. But I know it'd be something with entertainment. I also love cooking too, so I think it'd be something creative like that.
What's you got to tell me what your signature dish is? That one thing that people say, oh yeah, let's go over there and let's go over to Dylan's place and grab because he makes this thing. What would that thing be?
Barbara and I created this recipe together that we've now tweaked a little bit from the beginning, but it's pretty simple. And honestly, it's the simpleness of the dish is what always gets our friends. It's the only dish I've ever made where I'll have my friends reach out and ask me when I'm making that thing particularly. And it's just ground beef, seasoned ground beef, white rice, vegetables, whether that's like peas, green beans, carrots, something diced small. You get those cooked. You add it to the bowl, and then you add furikake, which is a type of Japanese seasoning.
Yeah, I literally made this the other night, by the way. Just what you're saying, it's and my daughter can confirm it's sitting there because we didn't eat all of it. I got to throw some of it out. But I made that the exact with a little bit of Asian seasoning as well, like soy sauce, a little oyster sauce as well.
I do. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Sometimes I put that into the beef, and then what I'll do is I'll drizzle Japanese mayonnaise over it. I'll put pickled radishes in there. And then you just mix that up and eat it, and it's perfect meal. It's relatively healthy, and it is you can create a ton of it at a time. And that's the one dish that all my friends will come over and try to eat.
I could go down this all day with you, but like I said, I should not be doing these chats when I'm hungry. But the last question I got for you: if you were to jump into that DeLorean, you're going to cruise back to when you were 16, you've got a piece of advice you think would be really good for 16-year-old you to hear. What would that be?
Oh, it's 16. Wow. Gosh, I don't try to think. I'd say probably go easier on yourself. It's probably what I would say. I was pretty hard on myself at 16. And it helped me a lot, but I was, I think like a lot of 16-year-olds are, you're kind of insecure about growing and who you are and where you fit in and all that. And I would just say that I think you can trust that people like you honestly, and that go easier on yourself. That's what I'd say.
Dylan, I so appreciate you taking some time with me today. This is great.
Likewise.
My kids grew up with you. That means I grew up with you when I was in my 30s. So my 21-year-old wanted to wave at you.
How's it going?
This is Lily. She watched all your shows. So.
Hi, Lily. How are you?
Good.
So she's acting as my producer today. She's producing the puppy for me. Congratulations on everything, man. This sounds wonderful. It's exactly kind of sounds like what you want to be doing. And I'll toast you with my next beer, and we'll think fondly of you, my friend.
Good man.
You take care now.
So long.
All right, there you go. Dylan Sprouse. Really enjoyed the chat. A little trip down memory lane, kind of. You know, my kids grew up, as I mentioned, just on Disney Channel all the time. Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Sweet Life on Deck. It's cool to see them maturing into really great actors. As I mentioned, I was on a cruise ship, not feeling so well, sitting back and stuck in the cabin for 24 hours, watching his brother's movie called 5 Feet Apart, which was a great little movie. Really enjoyed that. But of course, we're talking about Dylan's brand new movie. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It is called The Duel. It is something different. I'm going to leave it at that. It is a different kind of movie. It's a fun kind of a ride. Checked it out with my daughter Lily. She enjoyed it as well. Tell you what, don't forget, if you would, please follow the show, follow Story and Craft. Just head to your favorite podcast app, click follow, like, whatever have you. That way, hey, you get notified every time we have a new episode. And everything you could possibly want to know about the show, past guests, send me a note, whatever. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com. All right, that's it. I'm going to go head on out of here. As always, going to go grab a bite to eat. One of my favorite post-podcast production activities, a bite to eat. You go have yourself a great rest of your day, and thank you once again for making this show part of what you got going on. I appreciate it. You have a good one. We'll talk soon, right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation, right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story. Come on.